I need to shut that window. Sorry about that, everyone. Well, here we are Sunday night. It's been 2 weeks, right? And we are finishing our first book April morning. Tomorrow night, April 6th, we will begin Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. I think a little bit longer. I think it's going to take us probably a little closer to 3 weeks. I could be wrong on that. But, there's something about this book that Upton Sinclair's book, it should be a little bit easier to get through. As you've noticed, this book is tough to read at points, right? It's tough to get through because the writing switch, excuse me, it switches back and forth between the author who lives today, writing like we would understand today, but then when it goes to the dialect of our characters, it switches to a totally different way of speaking, right? So the book is a little challenging that way to read it, even though it's only about a 200-page book. It's not a real big book. But so it poses some challenges. Now, the book that we're going to read, Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, is written, I want to say 1903, 1904. So it's a book that's actually older than this book, but it's going to read, I think, in a lot of ways quicker. So again, I think it's probably going to be about 3 weeks for us to get through. Maybe not. I'm not 100% sure. And maybe, with The Jungle, maybe we'll read for 35 minutes every night, and then jump into current events. But I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. So, we shall see. For those of you that want a little bit of a preview on your work that's coming up this week, at least the U.S. history students, starting on Monday, I'm going to be dropping a DBQ, which will be on Thomas Paine's Common Sense, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin, and last but not least, Upton Sinclair and The Jungle. So this was a DBQ that, I want to say it dropped, was it 2 Junes ago? I think so, 2 Junes ago. And I honestly thought the students were going to, the students performed a lot better than I thought they were going to. And for the simple reason, on that DBQ, a lot of them had great outside information, right? So that's always an important thing, is not just the stuff that's in the documents, but here is something that I remember from U.S. history class, I remember from history, that I can bring into writing this essay. So anyway, man, my hair is active tonight. I got up today. I'll tell you, sitting in the chair and being on the computer is kind of knocked I've never, 47 years old, I've never had any back problems. And the last few mornings I've woken up and my lower back has not really felt so hot. And I've really been forcing myself to get out more. And this morning I went on a nice long brisk walk, got a couple miles in. And then this afternoon, the boys and I think we did about 3.5 mile, because we all timed it out on our fancy Apple Watches. But about 3.5 mile hike in just about an hour. So we were really cooking. I don't know, got out a lot today. I'm just wanting to get out more and more. But I guess I got home and I did not. I didn't put product in my hair, so I apologize. But anyways, let's finish this first great book. I've been so happy to read it with you. Let's get it finished. Let's talk some current events, and then tomorrow night we'll start something new. When we left off, Adam has returned to his village. He's become a man, right? He's become a man. There's no doubt at all. And, the way he handles himself with Cousin Simmons, the way he handles himself with his grandmother, with his mother, with his brother, right? He's really the character arc, as you would say, in ELA class has really, the character arc. He's traveled quite a bit. So let's see how things finish up. So as I walked across the commons in the darkness, my thoughts went back to my first awareness of a difference, a breaking away from the past into a future that became alive, self-shaping, apart, or so it seemed from our own will. I was also bidding childhood farewell, an action not singular and definitive, but repeated many times until the nostalgia so thin that it is meaningless. But I was not yet at that point. Because we played our game and one we loved most right here on the common, and it was only yesterday, only my yesterday, and up to the time when I became old for games. I was 12 then, and 12 at 12 your hands are hard enough for work, but I don't remember two more times during those 3 years after that when I played the game. In spite of my size, my long bones, my flat, strong muscles that could lift the plow off the ground. We called the game Pontiac. Once, Pontiac had been a villainous red Indian, but by the time I was old enough for the game, he had changed into a hero. We were children who knew little enough of what went on in the talk and the minds of our elders, but we knew that Pontiac, who had been bad, who had slaughtered the men of General Braddock, was no longer bad. He became a valid hero, so to say. The game was played this way. However, many of us circle, the Indians were inside the circle. The redcoats had a ball, which they flung back and forth across the circle, attempting to hit the Indians. Each Indian hit was eliminated. He had to remove himself from the game, which he usually did after substantial argument. And in time, one Indian was left, a boy who could now avoid the ball easily enough, since he had no one to interfere with or confuse his movements with. He was Pontiac. He had the right to choose any redcoat he pleased for scalping. The scalp was by rule limited to a hank of back hair, no thicker than a small finger. But many a boy with an ugly gap in his back hair had some explaining to do at home. I myself was scalped twice, but I had been Pontiac at least a dozen times, and I had the scalps hidden in my room to prove it. And now, as I walked home across the common, I remembered the game and childhood and clung to both, but hopelessly. By the time I entered my house, I had surrendered them. Oh, that's right. He was also, when we left off, he was walking back from they had brought the men that had died to the church, and he was walking back from the viewing. I forgot about that. Oh, and Cousin Simmons had asked what his intentions were with Ruth. Ooh. The house was filled with neighbors. The widow, Susan Simmons, had taken charge in the kitchen. The whole house was warm with the smell of good things cooking and baking. I think that then I was somewhat upset that so much attention should be paid to food and cooking and eating in a house where death had been. But as time goes on, I appreciate the deep wisdom of it. Food is close to the meaning of life. There are tributes enough to the dead. The food is a tribute to the living, who are in need of it at that time. There could have been no better consolation for Mother than the need to feed hungry people, among them myself. Adam, I told you to eat before, and you never did, she said to me. I can't depend on you to take a crust of bread if my back is turned. That was certainly new, and a part of the difference. Formerly, any reference to my stomach likened to a bottomless pit. She used to say to the neighbors, I don't know where that boy puts it. I just don't know. But it frightens me to watch what he piles or what he does to pie or to hot bread. Now I was going to starve myself if she didn't feed me forcibly. For her, I had to be a man with terrible urgency. There was no time to dream about the games I had played on the common. She had taken a grip on herself, and now when she wept, she would weep out of the sight of others. But she had to tell herself that here was a man, Adam Cooper, 15 years old, but overnight a man. But I wasn't. It doesn't work that way. I sat down at the kitchen table, and the woman fussed over me and set twice the amount before me than I could consume. But once I began to eat, I couldn't stop until I was near busting with roast and pudding and hot bread and pie. While I ate, the woman whispered about me. Poor boy, he looks so tired. Such a fine boy, such a dependable boy. I always said about that Adam Cooper, and I was right. Levi sat opposite with me, with his hero worshipping eyes. He had brought my fowling piece in from where I had dropped it. He cleaned it and he polished it until the metal shone like silver. In his mind, too, I had departed from childhood once we shared. No more battles between us, no more threats or name calling. Now he feels better, one of the women said, with a triumphant satisfaction a woman can exhibit when she sees a man well fed. But I felt no better, only more tired, more hopeless, more defeated. Ruth was there again. She stayed on the other side of the room and looked at me whenever she felt the others would not notice. In the candlelight and firelight, she was lovelier than I had remembered. But I wanted to cry out to her. Too quickly, too quickly. Can't you see what they're doing to me? Don't let them do it to you. But she wanted it. Her eyes were the eyes of a woman, and whatever the future held, she would not be afraid of it. When I had finished eating, Mother took me aside into the pantry and said to me, Where is Father lying now? In front of the pulpit with the other coffins, the Reverend covered them with black cloth. She nodded, and then she was silent for a moment. Adam? Yes, Mother. If I don't appear just the same, I mean the way you think about me as your mother, today and even tomorrow, you understand. I understand, I said. I mean that all you went through today, so much, oh my God, so much. I can't even talk to you about it or listen to your story about it. Do you understand? Of course I understand, Mother. In a little while, maybe in a few days. I know, Mother. Are you tired now, Adam? It's funny, I said, but I was more tired before. That's good. I want you to take a package of candles over to the meeting house. Mother, for what? Take them there. I don't want him to lie in the darkness tonight. But, Mother, the Reverend has candles. They're burning now. The place isn't dark. Let these candles be for later. All right, I agreed. I'll take them there, Mother. Granny sat at the kitchen table and made the long, green bayberry candles into a package. She had become an old lady. She had been my grandmother, but until tonight I had not thought of her as an old lady, withered and consumed, and it occurred to me that she had lost more than I lost. Nature rules wisely at times, and it's in the order of things that the parent dies before the child. Granny had lost too much. Adam, dear, she said to me, tell the Reverend that if these tapers are lighted, they will burn until the dawn comes. They are extra thick. I never thought it when I dipped them. I never thought it at all. I kissed her cheek, and the women fussed over her. Before I left, I glanced around for Ruth, but she had gone. I went out through the herb garden just outside the gate, and Ruth was waiting for me. What's that you're carrying, Adam? She whispered. Candles. Mother wants them at the meeting house so father won't lie in darkness. Ruth nodded. Could you lay them down just for a moment? I placed them on the wayfarer's bench, and Ruth flung her arms around me and she kissed me again and again. It was like I had never kissed her or embraced her before. Her mouth was so warm and soft, her body so tightly pushed against me. Oh, Adam, Adam, she said. When the news came that you were dead, my whole world died. Every bit of it. Nothing was left. My head was empty, my heart was empty, and I knew that I would grow old like Goody Hartman and become a skinny, dried up maid. I just couldn't see Ruth Simmons as a skinny, dried up old maid. One of the things we had in common was an appetite, and at the Thanksgiving dinner November past, the two of us had astounded the family, who declared that our performance was stunning, even for Massachusetts. But I was moved that she should feel that way. I love you so much, Adam. I am not afraid to say it now. I want to say it. I guess I returned her feelings, even if I did not take it somewhat for granted. Even if I did take it somewhat for granted. I couldn't think of myself of being married to anyone but Ruth Simmons, if only because there were so many things about myself that she just shrugged away and accepted. Things I would have the devil's own time explaining to another girl. I also had a strong suspicion that Ruth would make life unbearable for any other girl I took up with. But such things as marriage had been comfortably in the future. Ruth knew me well enough to reassure me and told me that it was all right. You don't think I want to be married at the age of 15? I knew that the Simmonses, men and women, were strong minded, and I mentioned that. Adam Cooper, how you talk sometimes. You want to walk over the church with me? Of course I do, she said. I picked up the candles and we started towards the common, holding holding hands and walking very slowly. It was most comforting, and I couldn't help thinking how rewarding and pleasant it would be if we could be together all this night and the next night too. Then I thought of Ruth and the other women too, alone in the town through the length of this whole day, with the town and the children and everything else as their burden, and the dead men to lay out themselves, never knowing whether their men were alive or dead or would ever return to them at all. I spoke about it to Ruth and how hard it must have been. It was harder for you, out with the battle, she said. I'm not sure. A battle's a funny thing. This one, anyway, it was like any battle. It wasn't like any battle I've ever read about in books. It was terribly confused. No one seemed to know much about what was going on or what to do, except to shoot at the redcoats. Did you, Adam? Know what to do? I said. Not a blessed bit. I meant, did you shoot at the redcoats? A few times, yes. I only had birdshot in my gun, so mostly they were out of my range. Did you kill anyone? She whispered. No, I hit some soldiers once because I saw them jump and yell out in pain, but I don't think I killed anyone. Did you want to, Adam? Maybe once, but only for a little while. I don't hate anyone enough to want to kill them. I'm glad you feel that way, Ruth said. I can't get used to thinking that we have to kill and fight now. I was upstairs at the window this morning when the redcoats fired. I saw one of them drive his bayonet into Jonas Parker's back. Jonas Parker's back when he was trying to run away. You shouldn't have watched that. But they could come back, couldn't they, Adam? And then it could happen all over again. I was silent for a while before I replied. No, it couldn't happen all over again. Why not? I shook my head. Why not, Adam? Because it ain't the same anymore, I said. We ain't the same. This morning, we knew that we wouldn't fight. But now we know that we must fight. And we're learning how. Crossing the commons, we met the Reverend, and I told him how I was bringing the candles to the meeting house. By all means, bring them there and let them be lighted, if that will please your mother, Adam. I have the place lit and intend to keep it all night. But if it brings her comfort to have more light there, then let it be so. For myself, I am on my way to see your mother now. I have so many calls to make. We are a town of sorrow and tragedy, and it happens too quickly. She'll be pleased to see you, sir. And Adam, sir, do you know about the muster? I know about it, Reverend. My cousin Simmons told me. Well, Adam, the Reverend said slowly, I am not one of those who might regard you as a boy. You've lived a man's life today, and you did a man's work. But think about it, Adam. Think about it. Youth is too easily shamed into action. Pride is stronger and potent. But let me only remind you that your first duty is to your mother. She needs you right now, as you never needed her, as she never needed you before. A week or a month from now, it might be different, but now she needs you, Adam. I nodded. I've been thinking about it. Good. And if I am not at your home when you return, Adam, God bless you and sleep well. And you too, Ruth. He left us, and when he was out of earshot, Ruth asked me what he meant. How do you mean? He spoke about the muster. What did my father tell you? I suppose you'll know tomorrow anyway. The British Army was driven back to Boston, and the Board of Safety made the decision to besiege Boston. So they called a muster of all the committees and a general mobilization of the militia. Not only here, Ruth, but everywhere in New England. The committees will send their men to fight at Boston. And you'll go? Oh, no, Adam, you wouldn't. I didn't say I'd go. Did I say I'd go? You didn't say so. Then why make a fuss? I'm certainly not going tomorrow or the next day. But I don't know what's going to come, Ruth. I wish I did, but I just don't. We walked to the meeting house, Ruth saying never a word to me until we were there. The meeting house was well lit, and there were still a good many people inside. Ruth hung back. I don't want to go in there where all those coffins are, she said. You don't have to if you don't want to, but there's nothing to be afraid of. It's my father there and his friends. Is that anything to be afraid of? She went inside with me. Then it was very quiet inside the church. The strangers had gone away, and those who remained were friends and relatives of the dead men. They sat here and there in the pews, mostly men and some boys, some of them with their Bibles upon their laps, but most of them sitting silently. I whispered a greeting to some of them and nodded at the others. Then I lit our candles and put them in brackets, leaving half of them for later. Others must have had the same notion as Mother did, for there was a stack of unlit candles on the track table to which I added mine. I think we should stay for a while, I said softly to Ruth, and she nodded. We sat down in our family pew, and after a few minutes, Ruth began to cry. I thought she was entitled to do that. I felt that there was no way a woman in our town who was not entitled to weep her fill after today. Ruth dried her eyes. I could see that she was more relaxed and that she felt better. She was very tired now, and so was I. We walked back across the common to the Simmons house, and at the door, Ruth said to me, Adam, do you love me? I thought about it for a while before I answered. I had known Ruth Simmons all my life, and with a girl you know all your life, you are likely to take things for granted. But about a year ago, we had been to Boston to visit some of Mother's relatives, and I met a fourth or fifth cousin or something of that sort, a girl of 16 with blue eyes and long hair. I thought at the time that she was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my life, and I fell madly in love with her, even though I never saw her again. My passion for her lasted 5 or 6 weeks. Then it kind of dwindled. I had never fallen in love with Ruth in just that way, but then neither had the feeling I had for her dwindled. It remained on a kind of even keel, except for moments like this, when I felt closer to her than anyone else in the world. So after thinking about it, I nodded to her and said yes. I thought I loved her as much as I would ever love any girl. I love you, Adam Cooper, she told me. I don't change easily. Even if this war lasts a whole lifetime, it won't change my feelings about you. A lifetime's a long while, I said. I don't care. Then I kissed her and I bid her a good night. Only the Simmons woman still remained with mother and granny when I came home. And a short while after I arrived, they left. Levi was sound asleep, like myself and so many others. He had missed the sleep of the night before. Mother and Granny were both of them exhausted, and I suggested that we all go to bed. Sorry about that. I won't sleep, Mother said. You will, Mother, because you must. No, I won't sleep, she said. Granny took her upstairs. There were things that had to be done at night that Father usually did, and I did them. Then I drew water from the well for the morning. Granny was back in the kitchen when I returned. Is Mother sleeping? Sound asleep. Sound asleep, excuse me, when her head touched the pillow, Granny said. And you, Granny? I need little sleep, Adam. And I'll be going along. Yes, Granny said. At the door, I paused and said to her, Granny, I had Father only a while. Sometimes I feel that I had him the way you have a father and love him. Only last night, though. You had him a long time. He was your father, but he was my child, Granny said softly. I love you, Granny. You have me and you have Levi. Do I, Adam? Yes. Do I, Adam? Do you think the news of the muster isn't all over the town? When will you be going away, Adam Cooper? No one said I was going. You may lie to others, Adam, but don't lie to me. I'm not lying, Granny, I protested. I just haven't made up my mind about anything. I'm too tired to think about it anyway. But you've thought about it? I suppose so, Granny. Time will come, and you will go. I guess you're right, Granny. A time will come, and I will go. But there's no way out of it. But let's not talk about it tonight. Come upstairs with me, Granny. No. Go ahead, Adam. I'll sit here a while.
I don't know that.
Uh-oh. That was my Alexa. Sorry about that. Let me back up. Oh, let's see here. But you thought about it. I suppose so, Granny. Time will come and you will go. I guess you're right, Granny. A time will come and I'll go. There's no way out of it. But let's not talk about it tonight. Come upstairs with me, Granny. No. Go ahead, Adam.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Alexa, stop. No, go ahead, Adam. I'll sit here a while and think. Plenty to think about, you know? I went over to her and I kissed her and I said goodnight. In my bed, with the covers drawn up close around me, I closed my eyes and I whispered a prayer. Not the same prayer as all the other nights. I said, thank you, God, that today is over. Then, falling asleep, I said farewell to childhood. I said goodbye to a world, a secure and sun-warmed existence, and past that was over and done with and gone away for all time. April Morning, my friends. What a great book. I read this in the 7th grade with Brother Brendan. I had the great fortune of going to Christian Brothers Academy for 7th and 8th grade for junior high school, then 9th grade through 12th grade for high school. And in the 7th grade, not only did we take ELA, math, and all that other good stuff, art, we took music, we took everything. We also took a reading class with Brother Brendan. And Brother Brendan was about 5'3", and I don't think he was more than maybe 110 pounds soaking wet. But he had us read some of the greatest books. I had him for reading class in the seventh and eighth grade, and we read books like The Outsiders, Sherlock Holmes. We read April Morning. We read some awesome, awesome books. A book called Viva Chicano, which was a book very similar to The Outsiders, if you read The Outsiders. But the thing that I always loved about April Morning, and the thing that's always kind of resonated with me, is not only is it this incredible book about our country and what people were going through when our country was founded, but it's also this great coming of age story. There are times in our lives where things happen and we grow up, right? We kind of look back and we go, whoa, I was worried about this. I was worried about that. This is nothing, right? And those moments happen over and over and over again. I don't think they happen and bam, you're an adult and that's it. Because I think that there's a lot of different phases of adulthood. There are different phases of parenting, and Adam is kind of naive, and he kind of, I don't want to say he doesn't care about things, but this, that, whatever. And then in a short few hours, he's now the man of the family. He's the man of the house. And I think that probably for some of you, what we're going through right now is going to help you mature. Some of you may have entered this a child and come out of this a young adult. I certainly think that this is going to help a lot of people stand more on their 2 feet, right? Or stand on their own. There are moments in our lives where different things happen, and sometimes it can be events that shape our whole world, and sometimes it can be things that change our country, or sometimes it can just be things like in our family. And I right when I was around your age, I guess I was a sophomore. I wasn't a junior or senior, but just a few days after my 16th birthday, which is like one of those glorious moments, right? You turn 16. My grandmother passed away, and I think that I always look back at my mom's mom, who I was very, very, very close with. Her passing was it hit me harder. It hit me very hard, and it really, like, I think that really just kind of a switch flicked in me, and I started to say, all this nonsense that people are worrying about, people my age were worrying about, it just doesn't matter, right? Because I had seen death. I had not seen my grandmother die, but I experienced it, and I experienced that loss. And even about a year and a half ago, when my mom passed, that was, I think, a big moment for me, where yet again I shed a lot of, this kind of stuff just isn't. Why are we sweating this stuff? Why are we worrying about this stuff? Let's reprioritize. So in PIG class, in government, we talk about values. We talk about, these things that are important to us as Americans. And those things will change for us over our lifetime. And I think that our coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus that is hitting our country right now, even though today we're seeing like a little ray of sunshine up there in the sky, when it comes to us battling this, it's going to change our values. It's going to make people, and I think it's certainly one of the things that a lot of people are going to start thinking more about, is money. I think a lot of people are going to be hit real hard with this, even if we come out of this a little quicker than we had anticipated, which I'm not saying we're going to. But I think a lot of people are maybe going to say, maybe I don't need this crap, right? I'm not going to do this like impulse buy. Maybe I'm going to leave the money in the bank for a rainy day when I might need it. So I don't know. We'll see. We shall see. Okay, my friends. So let's do our current events. We haven't seen each other for a few days, and we missed Sydney's birthday yesterday. But we said happy birthday to her on Friday, and I'll try to remember before we sign off tonight to we'll sing happy birthday to Sydney tonight, but not right now because my throat is way too dry. Okay, here we go. So across the country, 321,000 cases, 9,100 people have passed away. 122,000 of those cases, so over 1/3 of those cases, I guess it's probably closer to like 37, maybe 38% of the cases are from New York State, our state. 4,200 people in our state have died. So a little more than, you're welcome, kiddo. A little more than a third of the cases, but a little less than half of the deaths. Now, here's the ray of sunshine. And again, I don't want everybody like running to mom and dad and saying it's over, it's over, it's over, because it's not. And even if all the indications, we kind of got all these green lights today, if we got all these green lights today, it's still going to be a while till things are back to normal. But what the governor talked about was this: the number of new cases versus the number of people that have died today or in the last 24 hours seems to indicate a slowing. So, okay, one day. But here's the thing, is you can't look at what we're going through and say one day tells a story. And that's one of the things when I watched the president's press conference, which was rather comical, just for a lot of different reasons. And I'll get into that later. Excuse me. You can't just look at and one day, okay, here we go, here's signs. You can't do that. You have to look at it over a longer period of time. And, again, the thing that is worrisome to me, but it seems as though we're getting closer, is that there are still, like they say, well, there are areas of New York where there are very few cases, but they're still not testing. There's still only, I think, 5 positives in the county that I live in. That's pretty good, right? Okay, that's pretty good. But guess what? They haven't even really tested out here yet. So the real good news that I saw from the press conference tonight is, first of all, Dr. Fauci there has said that, the government, the federal government right now, is struggling. He admitted it. They're having a difficult time reading all of the data. They're having a difficult time coming up with a clear consensus on what to do. So, hold on, Justin. I appreciate that. Okay, if and I might get a little excited, I might get a little emotional about this. Not like I'm crying, but for me, that's what I want to hear. Okay. You know what? Right now, we don't know what to do, but we're doing the best we can and we're fighting the fight. And, we're trying to get you the best information possible. I personally would rather hear that. I would rather hear we're having a hard time and we don't know how to advise you right now than some political spin, than some, let me just redirect the question into something else and spin it into some kind of, positive thing. And I haven't really answered the question. So to me, thank you, Dr. Fauci, for being honest and upfront with us. Justin says, I read from a virologist, forgot the source, can refind it, that this week is supposed to be the worst of it. It should start to calm down after that. Well, that's what they're saying they think is going to happen. They think that this week could be the peak, that things are going to get real bad. And they're saying that's what's going to happen across the country. However, and I don't want to doubt you, Justin, I just, right now they're saying like certain parts of the country are just starting to get hit. So maybe in New York, and again, the governor today in his press conference said that, in maybe 3 or 4 days, if we've had some numbers like this, okay, then maybe things are kind of working. But like what they did say is that while upstate seems to be right where we live, things are kind of like this right now. Good, good, good. They've kind of flattened. We've kind of flattened the curve up here. If you live in Long Island, if you live in, I think it's Suffolk County, if you live in Westchester County, if you live in Dutchess County, the cases are still taking off like crazy there. So, and that, leads us into one of the things that, let me get back to, and this is to my point, and I hope you're right, Justin. I mean, I hope that this is the worst of it. I hope that, things, bam, we hit it. Here's the apex, and things start to get better from there. But like in Boston, they're just starting to kind of clamp down and do what we've been doing today, right? They've just kind of started to really do that now. So we're kind of a couple weeks ahead of them. What are we in week? We're going into week 3 of this. Our last day together was March 13th. So we're going into week 3. So where we were 3 weeks ago, they're just kind of there. So I think different parts of the country are going to see that peak or worst spot in different times, if that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. So we'll see. I think like the safest place to live right now is Montana, which is really interesting too. And I don't know if we talked about this the other day, but I've talked to some people about this out in Middleburg, and I've talked to a couple other teachers about this, is that, a lot of people are now starting to really wonder about like where I live. I live in a pretty rural area. And people are starting to say, not a pretty rural, it's a rural area. And people are starting to say, like, are we going to start to see, it is, well, it's 3 full weeks. We're entering week 4. Right. Thank you, Mrs. Danable. But a lot of people are starting to say, I wonder if instead of like, hey, I've lived in New York City my whole life and I'm going to retire in my brownstone in Brooklyn, maybe these people are going to bail on the brownstone in Brooklyn and they're going to move up to the Middleburg. So a lot of people are wondering, are people going to start taking advantage because real estate is going to be hurting, right? I'm glad that I bought a house a year ago. I'm glad that I'm not buying a house today because, well, interest rates might be okay, but it's just kind of a volatile market right now. And, so what effect is this going to have on urban centers? Are people going to say, almost every 2 years we've had some kind of kooky virus like this that has sprung up, or the swine flu, the SARS epidemic? maybe it's time to get out of Dodge. Maybe it's not worth it to live in New York City anymore. So we'll see. We'll see if we're going to see a shift of urban living and a move back to rural living. What do I got? What do I got? Lots of things to talk about. Okay, so the governor today mentioned, and he mentioned this yesterday, that there are some executive orders that he has written and that he's already written that he needs to extend and new ones he needs to sign, but he really hasn't shared what those are. So, for us, we don't know what's going to happen with school. Excuse me. The $64,000 question is, are there going to be regions? How are we going to grade for the rest of the year? Are seniors truly going to be able to graduate in June? Are they going to graduate in August? Who knows what's going to happen, right? And I haven't heard that, but there's a lot of questions, right? So I think a lot of people are saying, hey, Governor Cuomo, well, let's hear about it. Don't kind of drop these. And maybe he dropped those comments and he didn't really mean anything by them, but we'll see what's going to happen in the next few days. One of the things that did happen is that New York State, the governor, we've officially moved the New York State primary. So on April 28th was supposed to be the primary for the upcoming presidential election, which is scheduled for November 3rd. New York State was supposed to, and New York State, it's a big state, right? It's a biggie. There's a lot of delegates that are up for grabs. We are right next to Bernie's state, right? So this could, even though Biden, he doesn't have it totally locked up, but it's getting there. This could be a big state to swing back into Bernie's favor. So, but that's been officially postponed until June 23rd. So, we've kind of gone into this election blackout right now, right? We've kind of gone into this. We were like Super Tuesday 1, Super Tuesday 2, boom, 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 all these debates. And then things went, right? We just went into a total kind of election blackout, and we've turned everything on the coronavirus and ventilators and flattening the curve, and we've kind of forgotten that there are still really 3 people, I guess you could say, in the race, because I don't think that Tulsi dropped yet. I don't know if anybody has any information on that, but I think Tulsi is technically still in the race. She is a representative from Hawaii. She was a major in the Army. I think she was in the medical corps, and that's where she joined the Army after 9/11, got into the medical corps, and moved up the ranks to major, which is a pretty good rank. And then has been in I don't know how long she's been in Congress for, but she is still technically out there. I actually saw some signs for her the other day when I had to go in and get some groceries for my dad, and I saw a guy who had and I'm not kidding, 500 Andrew Yang lawn signs, has now replaced them all with Tulsi signs. So obviously this guy, I guess, doesn't want to see one of our old establishment, Joe Biden or Bernie, get elected. He wants to see some new blood. So again, remember, guys, if you have any questions, throw them out there. Okay, questions and comments. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So here's the one thing that I read about today. I read about it on the New York Times website, I think. I go to 4 or 5 different sites, and I believe it was on the New York Times website. Apparently, Governor Cuomo and President Trump have discussed a 3-state quarantine. So Governor Cuomo has come out to say that he doesn't like the idea. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that, he could stop it. But I guess that President Trump has considered basically using the National Guard, quarantining everyone in Connecticut, everyone in New York, and everyone in New Jersey, and just kind of locking those three states up, not letting anybody travel in between those states, and just locking those states up for a certain period of time to flatten the curve, right? You guys may or may not know this, but there are a lot of people, you probably, this isn't hard to imagine. You probably won't be surprised at it, but there are a lot of people that live in New Jersey, but they work in New York City. Well, there are also a lot of people that live in Connecticut that work in New York City. So, that transmission of people and the transmission of the virus, that's why they're, kind of saying maybe we should lock this thing down, and lock those three states down. So here's some great news. One of the things, my friends, two awesome things. First of all, a company has created a 15-minute test. So meaning this, bam, they take some blood, boom, boom, they know in 15 minutes whether you're positive or not. And where I guess the federal government wants to focus this is with law enforcement, right? We're starting to lose a lot of law enforcement around the country. We're starting to lose doctors. We're starting to lose nurses. We're starting to lose first responders because they're going to help people. They are getting infected, and they themselves, because they've been overworked, they are, they're more susceptible, and they're passing away from this virus. So apparently, there are a lot of people in Michigan. This is another place in our country that's been severely hit, that they were able to test these people, test law enforcement, and say, you don't have to self quarantine. Get back out there because this 15-minute test is working. And there's a lab that I guess is that's perfected this test, and they're able to make 50,000 tests a day. And what they're doing is they're able to share this. And I guess apparently, I don't know if, oh my God, and I'll tell you, my kids, hated, the swab thingy that you do your strep test. They go, say, they stick that thing down your throat, and then they, put it in the little like sleeve, and then they test it, right? Apparently, the companies that can make that test, well, maybe, okay, did I say blood? Maybe it's not a blood test, must be a saliva test then. Apparently, they can convert these strep tests into the corona tests. So again and again, they can make like 50,000 a day, and they're going to share. This is how you do it. So that, I mean, to me is great. But what it might mean, and I think that some of our government people have kind of alluded to this, is that like if we test you and you're okay, well, guess what? Get your butt in your house, and you're not coming out until we tell you, because we know you're good. We know you don't have the virus. So you have to get in, you have to lock down, and don't come out until we give the okay. So I don't know, but I think it's awesome that we have that test. Now, on a similar topic, but not as exciting. So the other day I was driving by SUNY Albany, and I saw some armed workers, and they were just standing there, and I could see that they had guns on, and the state police, or the SUNY police, they do have a whole police force that monitors the campus. But I called up my friend who works there. He's a professor there, and I said, "Hey, man, listen, I saw armed troops or armed police officers on this section of the campus." I said, "It kind of seems weird. What's going on?" And he said, "I have no idea." No idea at all. Well, guess what? I found out. So starting tomorrow, SUNY Albany is going to have a drive-through test site. So, what you're going to be able to do if you go and if you Google New York State mobile testing, you'll get a phone number and they will give you an appointment. So, they'll say, okay, Mr. Martin, at 3 o'clock, you can come through the mobile, place. There'll be a thing set up for you. You drive through, bing, bang, boom. Now, this is not, as far as I know, not going to be one of these 15-minute tests. I think this is a test that takes days. So it's not like you're going to go in and by the time you get home, they're going to call you up and say, hey, we want to let you know, blah, 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 blah. No, it's still going to take a couple days, but they are starting that mobile testing facility tomorrow. So I guess being the realist and being a person that, tries to look at the big picture, I guess that's good because I know it's good because now more people are going to know, oh, I have it. Now I need to be treated. I don't have it. Maybe it's time for me to get serious. Maybe it's time for me to socially network or socially distance and really lock myself down. So that could be good. But I'm starting to wonder, though, are the numbers going to shift? Meaning now we're going to be testing a lot more people. So in 2 days or 3 days, are we going to see a big spike of numbers? So we will get through this, guys. There's no doubt in my mind that we are going to get through this. And I'm trying myself to not get overly optimistic today because when I heard the governor say hey, you know what? There's some signs here. I kind of went, all right, maybe we'll get back to school this year. Maybe we'll actually see each other before the end of the year. Maybe we will have the Regents exam, which will be awesome. But we'll see in a couple days. We'll see what happens. Get those questions and comments out there, my friends. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So this day in history. In 1850, nope, hold on. Let's go back. 1614. In 1614, Pocahontas married John Rolfe. So this is not, I did not get this information from the movie Pocahontas, right? This is from actual history. Pocahontas married John Rolfe. I think in the movie, Pocahontas marries John Smith, right? I think that's something that the movie does wrong. I don't know why they did that. I don't know why they changed that. 1792. Very interesting. 1792. I did not know this, but on this day, April 5th, 1792, President Washington does something for the first time. Something that only a president can do. Let's see how many of you can guess it or who guesses it first. So Washington has been a president for a short period of time. And on this day in 1792, it is the first time that an American president will do this thing. What is it? Type it. Let me see it. I know you can do it. It's a power the president has. And he did it the first time on this day in 1792. Oh my goodness. Is there a major lag here or you guys are killing me? Take a guess. The president, the executive branch can do this thing. And he did it for the first time on this day. Oh, you're making me say, I'm not, you know what? If I get upset, I'm not singing the Sydney. I know that. One of you knuckleheads out there should be able to guess this. All right, I'm going to come back up. No, Sydney, think about the president. What can you're close. You're close. Think about the legislative branch, right? The legislative branch takes a bill, right? And they say, okay, here we go. Here's the bill. Now we need to make it a law, and we send it to the president. And the president can do one of two things. He can make it, no, that's a good guess, Justin. That is a good guess. He can either sign it or make it a law, or he can do this other thing. That's right. He vetoed. Justin wins the golden something award for today. The golden medical mask award. I'll drop it in the mail for you. So the Senate, this is very interesting. The Senate and the House of Representatives actually sent a bill to Washington, and I had never known this before. And what they tried to do is golden toilet paper. There we go. Good one, Mrs. D. The Congress was actually going to change the way northern states got seats, and that would have increased the amount of seats that northern states had, because they looked at southern states and thought that they had too much power. And Washington went and vetoed it. Veto. You should have had that, Sydney, but that's okay. I'm going to sing to you because somebody got it. Okay, 1859. Here's a tougher question, and Mrs. Deanna Bull, we can leave this. You can answer this too. So in 1859, Charles Darwin sends the first 3 chapters of his book to his publisher. And the name of that book is called The Origin of Species. But in the book, he starts to, or he coins this phrase that, today we use in a number of different ways, but it's what he's known for. This phrase, he says that, we've looked at science, and we kind of, when we look at the species of the world, maybe this is what's happening. So he coins this phrase, and in U.S. history, we talk about it because businessmen start to adapt this same philosophy, the same belief that just like the species of the world surviving, so will the businesses of the world. So what was that? If you want to get another golden roll of toilet paper, yell out or type in what Darwin coined, that thing he coined about species of the world. There we go, Mike. Survival of the fittest. You got it. Survival of the fittest. Good job. I am parched tonight. Okay. 1933, right? 1933. No, Mrs. D was not born at that time. Mrs. Deanable wasn't around. Neither was I. We are very spry, young people. But in 1933, the height of the Great Depression, President Roosevelt creates what's called the Civil Conservation Corps. And this is all about creating jobs, right? So it's kind of timely that we're talking about it right now. One of the things that President Trump is talking about using this stimulus money for is he is saying, look at our highways, look at our bridges, they're crapola. Let's take some of this stimulus money, and one of the ways that we can get people working is rebuilding our infrastructure. Okay. So jobs are good. Jobs going to get the economy rolling, and that's what President Roosevelt does. But at the time at this time in our nation's history, we're not talking about rebuilding roads. We're talking about building roads. So one of the things the Civil Conservation Corps does is they build roads. They build roads in national parks. They start to build roads across our country. They start to build dams, right? One of the things that the Civil Conservation Corps wants to do is, if we can build hydroelectric dams, especially out in Tennessee, what's going to become the Tennessee Valley Authority, we can build hydroelectric dams that not only can create cheap and affordable electricity for the country, which is now starting to become dependent on electricity, uh, we can also keep and maintain flooding into the valleys where farmers have their farms. So they looked at this as kind of a win-win situation. Um, so that begins, and out where I live in the Berg, there is a route 145, and 145 goes from Catskill to Middleburg, right? It really connects two big metropolises right now. Not really. But what it did is it really helped people kind of get across the Catskills and then be able to jump out to places like Utica and Syracuse and out to the central part of our state a lot easier. And the Civilian Conservation Corps helped to build and make that a bigger and better road. And what they did was halfway between Middleburg and Catskill, they built a big camp where a lot of the men that did the work were able to live. And you can still, the parts of the camp, I guess, are still there, but there's this big bridge that's built right off of 145, and that's where they built the big camp. And you see it's called CC Camp Road. So a little history right here in the Berg. So here's something interesting, and we're just about to talk about this in U.S. history. Well, I shouldn't say we're not just about to talk about it, but we're not far away from it, right? Is after World War II, we were very worried that these war-torn parts of Europe, these countries, were going to start to fall to the Soviet Union. And on this day in 1945, Yugoslavia signs an agreement with the Soviet Union. So Yugoslavia becomes one of the first countries that is going to kind of buy into, right now, maybe, aligning ourselves with the communists in the Soviet Union is better than working with one of these Western powers. So again, Cold War, right? We're worried about these commie bastards. We're worried about communism spreading to America. And today marks the, let me do quick math, 69th anniversary of when Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were sentenced to death. So Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were two people that were tried and convicted, and let's say maybe the evidence wasn't exactly the best evidence out there, but they had been convicted of sharing secrets with the Soviets in regards to the Manhattan Project and our nuclear technology. There was an English scientist who had worked on the Manhattan Project. I think his last name was Brown, but I don't remember. He had been caught, and he had admitted that the Rosenbergs were a part of this sharing of information. And anyways, they were sentenced to death, and then in, I believe, 1953, so 2 years later, they were actually put to death, tried for sharing these secrets with the Soviet Union. And then the other interesting information that I found about today, this day in history, in 1994, so we're going back to Mr. Martin's junior year in college. On this date, Kurt Cobain committed suicide. So, I know this is kind of a trying time, and it's kind of a sad time for everybody. And I don't bring it up for that, but I really remember that, it was a moment in my life when I always really understood the power of music and the power of art. And, really the power of music. My dad had this incredible record collection, and he used to play all this really awesome, really cool music for us. And, I really learned at a young age, like, that just music alone, not even lyrics, can really help you. It can sway your emotions one way or another, and that when he died, it really kind of amazed me. And I remember where I was. I was actually in my technical. No, I was in not my technical theater class, in my scenic design class, and we were all working on our final projects. And somebody had the radio on, and it came over the radio that he had been found, and people just started crying and bursting into tears. And I was like, wow. I mean, I was a Nirvana fan, and I really liked Nirvana, but I don't know. It was just one of those moments where I kind of went, geez, I didn't think that this guy really had such an incredible, that big of an impact on people. Um, but anyways, I don't want that to seem insensitive. But it was just kind of one of those moments for me where I kind of, like I just did, I just kind of scratched my head and went, wow, huh. And I remember when, uh, John Lennon died. And I was much younger when John Lennon died. I remember my mother being very emotional about that. And certainly other people that had passed away, that are a part of our culture more than like they're a part of our government. I remember when Ronald Reagan was shot. I don't remember. I don't really remember Elvis dying, but I remember the impact. Holy cow, the impact Elvis had. My aunt she had, whoa, did she have an impact, a crush? And Elvis had a big impact on her life. And I remember going to her house, and she had one of these like velvet Elvis kind of things on the wall. Like it looked like kind of like a rug of Elvis, you know what I mean? And it was kind of creepy because like when I walked by it, it looked like it was eyes would follow me. It just kind of creeped me out, and I'm not lying to you. And I remember I had made fun of it, and man, my aunt was just pissed. Holy cow, she was just furious with me. And again, I mean, I think there's music in general has had a huge impact on me. But somebody like Elvis, had such a crazy impact, an amazing impact on America and young people. And I guess Kurt Cobain had that as well. And again, I was a big Nirvana fan, but I didn't take it. It really didn't affect me like it affected a lot of other people. So, anywho, that's what I've got for you guys today. I don't think I have anything else. If anybody else wants to sneak in a question in there, it's been a while here, guys. We're getting through this. We are going to get through it. We're doing some good reading. We finished our first book. We're going to start our next book tomorrow night, and I'm super happy about that. I kind of have a feeling, I'm making a little prediction here. Kind of have a feeling this week we're going to start to get some more information, and I think that we're going to start to find out some things. I know that a lot of people aren't happy about us having school over our April break, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And when the fit hits the shan, as it has now, we've got to adapt. I think I spent a long time of my life being very rigid and inflexible, but I thought that I was a flexible person, and I really wasn't. And I still think I'm a man of conviction, and there are a lot of things that I believe in. And I'm not going to change on those things. I mean, there's just things in my life that I know I believe in. I will always listen to someone. I'll also always say, hey, listen, let me hear it. Tell me what you think. But I know that there are certain things that I just don't ever imagine myself saying, yeah, I'm going to flip on this. I don't believe this anymore. But anyways, oh, Let's sing to Sydney, right? We'll sing to Sydney real quick. Hold on, let me get a drink. She better still be here, right? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Sydney. Happy birthday to you. Cha cha cha. Right? That's what you got to do. That's my boys when they were younger. They always loved that. I think they loved doing the cha 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 more than actually singing happy birthday or blowing out the candles. They always got a kick out of that. But anyways, my friends, good talk. Wow, we went late tonight. It's almost 10:20, almost 10:20, but that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Good talks and good reading. We're done with the American Revolution. We're going to jump about 125 years in the future, and we'll start reading Upton Sinclair's The Jungle tomorrow night. So, Sydney, you're welcome. You're welcome, kiddo. We'll start reading our new book, and hopefully we'll have some more information. And get outside today, guys. I got out twice, and boy, it felt good. If you can get outside and socially distance, try to do that, and keep up on your work. Office hours tomorrow, 11 to 12. If you have any questions about the work that drops in the morning, that will be great. Love to see you guys. I'd love to just hang out and talk. All right. So be good. Have a great night's sleep, my friends. I miss you. And I hope to see you soon. Hopefully it won't be, next fall. Hopefully it'll be some point this school year. But keep on trucking, guys. Run the marathon. Don't run the sprint. Talk to you soon.